Welcome to Games Growth with Upptic, a podcast about the discipline of scaling digital games. We speak with industry experts and investigate trends to highlight the strategies, technology, and tactics you can use to profitably grow your game to massive global audiences. If you're interested in learning more about Upptic growth services or technology, visit us at upptic.com. Welcome, Matej.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, super excited to have you on, Matej. I think a lot of folks in the industry might already know you, but I mean, Matej's got over 10 years of experience as a UA leader. He's launched over 32 games. He hosts a great podcast called 2.5 Gamers, and just generally one of the people whose opinions we always really respect. And today, I think we're going to dig into some hot takes on the current state of the user acquisition landscape. Is it dead? Is it changing? Is it healthy? But Matej, maybe just a little more, what should people know about what you're doing these days, and just kind of catch us up with your life and where your focus is.
Okay. Yeah, fun times. I work as a UA consultant for some time already, like 6 years, I guess. Working with different companies, scaling iOS campaigns pretty profitably. So I'm happy to be here and talk about it. Yeah. It's, I guess that's what I've been hearing. And well, I have my creative team, 10 motion designers. As you said, we're running the podcast 2.5 Gamers, which is amazing fun. It's a no bullshit gaming podcast, so it's hot takes there all the time. So great to be here, and that's it. Yeah, it's kind of brief intro. Gaming industry is always fun. I love to get my hands dirty on the campaign side of things, so always great to be sharing different things.
Awesome. So, I mean, why don't we just get into it? I mean, we did a show last week, just kind of like our team's take on the current state of the games growth marketing ecosystem, both from a developer standpoint and industry ad tech standpoint. High level, like what's sort of the narrative, like with the clients that you're supporting? What are you hearing? Let's start with just sort of perceptions. Like, what do you think is the dominant narrative? Like some of the things that we've been seeing is like, a lot of teams talking about like iOS investment is way down, or they've just given up on it. We've seen the numbers from a lot of the ad networks that like ad spend overall is way down. So like what's the narrative that you're hearing in the space right now?
Yeah, so everything is dead. UA is dead, mobile free to play is dead, WebFree is dead. So okay, so everything is dead. Thank you very much for listening. We can end here basically. Now of course, everything is getting harder and harder. I don't think anything is dead, but as soon as I hear this, I say, yes, it's dead. Move on. Try working on a AAA game so I have less competition. It's always better. Kind of works well. No, yes, spending is down, but it's most probably not because of iOS is dead or UA is dead. It's most probably also because, economic downturn. We are kind of getting into the recession if we are not already there for some time. People are kind of scared. Some of the companies already closed the shop, so some smaller companies really don't want to go there. So what I'm seeing, and I'm actually going for as well with different companies and different channels and games, it's just trying to aim for short payback periods rather than year, 2 years, which I've done a year ago maybe, or 2021. Right now it's more like 6 months, 3 months ideally, to get the money back quickly and have the money on the bank account actually, to pay salaries. The cash flow situation is tough. So, and it's something that's gonna kind of improve in some short period of time. I'm pretty sure, or actually expecting some changes like during the summer, but let's see what happens. I just wanted to say, even like the iOS versus Android, the SKAN 4.0 and all these like new things that are coming in, I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be hard, challenging to figure out. You need to connect multiple dots. Of course, it's really complex, but that's the part of the UA job. That's, we need to talk to game teams, creative teams, data analysts, and everybody just to figure it out. So it's not going to be, or not going to get any easier, unfortunately, but I'm optimistic, as always.
Let's start by, I think you're talking about some of the macro factors kind of outside of any of the practicalities of just user acquisition performance and returns. Definitely we've seen marketing budgets getting slashed. I think there's a lot of fear in the macro climate that's informing some of these decisions, kind of independent of actual performance. So let's maybe stay focused on those macros. Like a weird trend that I've seen that I've never seen, I'm an old head in this industry at this point now too, like something I've never seen before is killing spend on profitable games, where it's sort of like you've got the data to see like if you get D7 returns of X, you're going to get paid back to your point by like day 60, day 90, whatever the business goal is, and just budgets being slashed or games being killed anyway, just because of kind of this macro fear or optimizing the short-term cash flow. Are you seeing that same thing?
I'm not seeing the same thing, but only thanks to the discussion that I have with the companies, because yes, you're hearing from almost every fucking corner of the world, like, oh, well, we are screwed. Everything is down. Everything is dead. So, you need to decrease the budgets to survive, whatever. Like, yes, but of course, if you need the money on your bank account, sure, but not like slashed all the budgets. Just like, come on, like be, sensible. Really, let's just try to think about if you have profitable game, why on earth would you just decrease the budget? So you will see the money coming back certain point in the future anyway. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense. But
yeah,
things like everybody, is talking about, you need to be very careful.
Right. So
that's always the problem with these opinion leaders all over the world, painting the doom and gloom picture of the game industry.
I have a question for you in this context.
Go for it.
What type of company are the ones killing profitable games? Without saying names, like what size of business are we talking about?
Well, maybe I can start there. I mean, the thing that I've seen, I've worked at some larger companies, I've worked at some smaller ones. And one thing I've seen working at larger companies is there's a disconnect. There's a finance team that's looking at cash flow, money in, money out this month. And then there's a growth marketing team that's looking in a cohort-based view of, I put in $1 today and I'm over-indexing on the returns, this is good money. And so I'm personally seeing like in the sphere, particularly at the larger companies, where there's like finance teams or C-level making decisions that aren't in the UA weeds, understanding kind of like the cohort payback periods. Matej, what's your take?
But that's the thing. Usually bigger companies, they always have these like day 7 ROAS calls, and the UA managers are like, oh, well, okay, so I kind of achieved the day 7 ROAS. I don't care about anything else. So if the day 7 ROAS is lower, it can happen for some games that eventually, even if you scale the game or scale the budget, the day 7 kind of dips. But then eventually in 90 days, you will see higher profits after all. But no, this is my goal. This is why I also, as a UA manager in big company, I moved the budget to Android, because I can't measure the day 7 properly on iOS. So I don't care about that. I care about my bonus and my profits. That's it. My goals. Yeah. That's so
short-sighted.
I hate it. Yeah, I hate it. But those are the rules, and if you play by the rules, then you are rewarded. But like, it's only that's so bad when you're looking at only one KPI. Like, you always need to look at different KPIs, how the LTV curve looks like actually, if and when you're getting the money back. And if it's, like I said, if you're profitable, why would you decrease the budgets? It doesn't make any sense.
That's personal incentives, right? That's the entire
yeah,
issue.
Exactly.
And that's the issue with big companies, and why we see some of the most successful and agile UA players be smaller ones.
In this world, and also like post IDFA, like all the flexible and agile smaller teams, they always win because they adapt so quickly. It's Of course they do have small amount of money or not enough resources, but they can talk to the game team and then make change in a week. In big companies, it takes months.
Well, and I think to your point, that's where I think, as yourself as like a startup founder, I'm sure you can identify like when maybe this is a good transition to iOS. You mentioned some of the pain around that. We live or die based on whether we can deliver performance. We kind of cover different segments of the industry, but at the end of the day, like both of us are in the business of trying to drive profitable growth for game developers. So for us, like iOS hit and it's like crap, like we have to adapt or die, this is our main value proposition.
Nothing in between. It's like
right. So we had, I think, immense incentive to find a way to work in spite of this. So eventually for our team, we found some solutions that are working really well. But I think to your point, like the legacy developers, they're slower to change. And sometimes there's the lack of the ability to affect change. You mentioned the incentives, like the UA managers, like your goal, your KPI is this, and here are the tools you have to measure. Good luck, and so that informs a move to Android. But smaller independent teams can find ways to make that iOS growth profitable, where we've actually seen like immense opportunity. All the buyers left.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but you have to kind of think outside the box a little bit. Yeah, you can't just use the playbook from 5 years ago and get success there.
I have a question here, I think, for both of you. So we both, I think you, Matej, you've references at the top how you're spending a lot on iOS. We spent, I think, was it double or triple amount of iOS as Android now? Warren can correct that number.
About triple, over the last 2 years,
Matej, can you quantify, I mean, Warren, if there's any more color there, but also can you quantify what the opportunity is, either how much you're spending there or like what percentage of the budget or how much you imagine to scale? Like how large is this opportunity on iOS really today?
How should developers think about it?
Yeah. How should developers think about it? So I still spend like 70% of my monthly budget on iOS.
Yeah. Okay.
And great. Of course, there's some games and some teams that I can't say 100% accuracy that, okay, so this is this is the result of this campaign. Of course, if you have small team, what can you do? Well, you look at what kind of money you are spending on a daily basis, and then you compare it with the daily revenue. Of course, there will be some period when you need to look at like how it stacks up after some time, but still easy, like blended approach. Of course, it's not accurate. And it's never going to be anymore. Of course, we are going to see the privacy sandbox in the near future. So it's going to be harder to evaluate. But it's not the rocket science. So if you're a small team, you don't have big data team, of course. Well, what do? How much money you spend, how much money you earn. That's it. So you measure for 2 weeks. Look at the baseline, how much money you earn before you started spending. And then, of course, it will take time. But if you go slowly and steadily, you can actually get to pretty interesting numbers on a daily basis. And then you add more channels. Of course, it takes time because you need to compare the baselines between each other, but still, it's possible. It's definitely possible.
You bring up a great point. So clearly you're seeing success with your clients on iOS. We've developed, like, the first thing I want to kind of double click on is, like, for iOS, any strategy is going to involve some amount of modeling. Like, we don't get the granular truth for Android, like hard stop. SKAN's not going to get you there. The modeling that we've developed and I've seen other teams develop, none of it is going to be what we had in the past. So some level of modeling. Everyone agrees to that as like a rule of engagement and just acknowledging that. Separate from that, any team, like, you probably have a playbook that you go to for your clients. Upptic has a playbook in modeling that we've developed. I always tell people the same thing. It's like, okay, cool. Maybe you're skeptical. Like, yes, we're modeling. Just look at money in, money out. Like, let's do this for a few weeks. Look at your cash flow. Look at your all in. We're not going to be using all in to like optimize the UA campaigns, but it's your health check, right? It doesn't mean it's what you can't use it for granular decision making, but hey, we're spending more money. Are we making incrementally more than we spend when on just the most dumbed down metric possible? So that's, I think, something any team can do despite kind of the tactics you're using to scale iOS.
Pretty much. The funny thing is when you are spending, I always say this to companies, you can always blame it to the UA consultant. So if it doesn't make sense, you can blame it on me. I will take whatever, because people are skeptical. They always, we can't measure. We don't know if it's going to, it's like, okay, but if you don't try, you will never know. You will never know.
It's analysis paralysis, right? It's like, this isn't perfect, so we're just going to do nothing instead.
Exactly. And it's never going to be perfect from this point onwards. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know. I can't decide if it's fortunately or unfortunately. Yeah. But it's still possible.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. So I want to like kind of get a little bit granular here. And you sort of touched briefly on SKAN at the top. And I want to talk about what, if anything, are the SKAN signals that you use today? And I think, Warren, it's worth us talking about what we do at Upptic. And then how optimistic are you feeling about SKAN 4.0? So maybe just really quick, Warren, do you want to talk? I mean, the way that Upptic basically does it is we use the high confidence data. So like the install is a very high confidence signal from SKAN, whereas at least 2.0 conversion values and all the granularity that comes down funnel, much less reliable. That's the way, at least at Upptic, we approach it. SKAN 4.0, there's, we have all these different unlock periods, and maybe there's an ability to use it more effectively in the future. But I'm curious what you do with your methodology. Do you use SKAN at all, or how do you use installs? What do you do in order to use SKAN as a signal for your buying model today?
And of course, we don't expect you to spill any secret sauce. You got to hire Matej and his team for that. But
I always spill my secrets.
Kind of what's your philosophy?
Tell us all your secrets.
Yeah,
I always tell my secrets. If you want to subscribe to my brutally honest newsletter, just go for it. I always tell like what I kind of.
It's a good newsletter.
Thank you.
I enjoyed the Diary of the Dancing Unicorn.
Oh, yeah, man. That's thing. Unfortunately, these things happen to me on a fucking daily basis. So, but okay. Anyway. Okay. In terms of SKAN, so I do use SKAN for almost all the games, and then I can kind of use it for like benchmarking and what kind of day 0 or day 1 revenue I want to see in order to like scale the budget or to be able to kind of understand like what's happening. I changed the conversion scheme a million times before. Now went from funnel, whatever, onboarding different events to purchase. And now I use custom from time to time. Depends on the game, obviously, and what kind of different campaign optimization I want to use. But let's say I use purchase conversion schema all the time. So that kind of helps me to drive the purchase campaigns and value optimized campaigns as well, because based on the day 0 or day 1, let's call it first 24 hours of ability or opportunity from players to spend, I just kind of put the brackets. So depends on what kind of price point the game has. I model it based on that. And then there's obviously a cap on the day one spending as well. So I use that as like the highest limit for the conversion brackets. And I use even these like SKAN purchases and signals for LTV predictions. Obviously, I don't build that prediction, but I work with one company that kind of helps me do that, and it's super helpful. So that's like for the SKAN we see at the moment. For 4.0, I have no fucking idea what's going to happen. I have no idea. And I tried to stay away from all the like comments before IDFA was released, because it was always like, oh, everything remains to be seen. We don't know. And there's like so many podcasts on this topic and nobody said anything like actually valuable or insightful. No. So now I think like, yes, potentially it can and it will help. I'm really curious to see like what kind of conversions, different conversion schemas I will kind of use for different windows. Not sure yet, but as soon as I have any information, man, I will be sharing them everywhere. Because it's important. It's important to actually talk to people and see like how it works, so I can either share it or someone else can share it with me, because it's like, we need to help each other.
I mean, in a way, this is really great to hear, because we're seeing like, I think that our two teams have like two extreme ends of the spectrum. What I hear from Matej is you're really maximizing, going deep and utilizing SKAN, kind of getting every usable aspect from it, evolving with each version. Our team took a complete opposite approach, which is we're almost ignoring SKAN exists and then using a modeling layer from people who opt in, applying that to different disparate segments in a automated way. Both approaches have clearly seen success. So I think my message for people listening is like, there's different paths to success here. Don't talk yourself into that you need to give up on it, you know?
No, of course. No. The thing is like, if that works for you, amazing. And I said, okay, so I want to just try to leverage the SKAN as much as I can to actually understand like how it works. How can I use it for any UA in the future? And I had to learn it the hard way, to try different things, different schemas. And it took me a long time to actually figure it out. But you know,
it's kind of crazy. Like I mean, your experience level and the amount that you know, the same with our team, like experienced team, even UA professionals have trouble working with the system. And the idea of Apple rolling, I mean, it's beating a dead horse at this point of just being like, here you go, small indie developer who's doing UA yourself, like figure it out. And it's just so ridiculous in hindsight that it was the tool set. But again, beating a dead horse.
And like the thing is like, it's hard and it's not going to get any easier. But again, like I think like this is the part of the UA job anyway. So you need to adapt what's changing in the landscape, what's working now. And it's kind of 4.0. It's going to be again super different, and it's really complex. It's really complex.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm being a little hyperbolic when I say that like our tactic like ignores SKAN exists. We use kind of like some bare bones aspects of it based with the modeling of people who opt in, but you have to use some aspect of it or it won't work.
But it's the same thing. It's the same thing as with like testing creatives and the like creative testing methodology. So what works for me is in creative testing, for example, using, let's call it India for IPM based winners. It doesn't necessarily need to work for different companies and different UA teams. They have different testing methodologies, and it's fine. And that's okay. I used 4 different methods, and now I'm changing them as I go. And that's how it is. So it's not like, you need to do it this way to be successful. No, just find your way always.
So we know that UA is dead. And so I want to specifically talk about where I want to specifically talk about where is it dead? Where is it the most dead? So if I want to like sort of move on to the next sort of logical topic and talk about channel mix. I think, Warren, you probably have some interesting insights here, but also Matej, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where are you seeing that you're able to deploy capital most effectively? Which channels are you seeing that are most effective now? And where are you actually seeing potentially that you're seeing decreases in spend overall across the channel mix?
Facebook is dead, and I've been saying this for last year, and now it's almost truth. But it's very, for me, it was like very disappointing to see Facebook kind of decreasing the quality. And I even had a call with Facebook rep, and he said, "Oh well, we see quite opposite direction. Like everybody's spending." I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course." I talk to different UA managers. That's not happening. That's not happening. And if you can see this T-shirt, TikTok is sponsoring me,
I was going to say something about
it.
it.
Now, jokes aside, so yeah, Facebook still kind of works, but back in days, it was like 80% of the budget. Now it's like 30% of the budget.
20-30% is still pretty good, though, for like a normal channel,
yes.
right?
Yeah. But if you compare it to 80%,
yes.
that's a huge dip. And then you have all these like usual suspects: Google, Unity, AppLovin, TikTok. Now, what else?
Iron Source.
Other like network Iron Source, of course. So that's my main channel mix. Now I'm kind of intrigued to start experimenting with CTV a little bit more at some point in the future. I still am not sure yet when, because now when the economic situation is kind of not ideal, I don't want to just experiment with new things. It's not always the best idea, so I'm waiting on that. But then I started to work with influencers again, and not only for like UGC type of creatives, but also like trying to get a little bit of organic boosts here and there in different countries.
That was my next question, so good job preempting my question.
Sorry about that.
No, I just want to chime in. I think we've seen very similar trends. Facebook's still part of every healthy marketing stack. The percentage of budget has been decreasing. For the first time, we're seeing some healthy games where literally Facebook is being optimized out in favor of other ad networks. That's another thing I haven't seen any other year in my career. Agree with everything you said. One other kind of comeback kid that I would call out is Snapchat has started kind of becoming a more important part of the portfolio again. I'd say this is like a last 6 month kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm wondering almost if just when people were cutting marketing budgets, if that was one of the early channels cut. A big theme is kind of like the money ball of the situation. Like, where has the cost of buying traffic gone down so much? iOS is one aspect of it. Another is like ad networks where people have really pulled spend and finding opportunities there, but mostly agree with all that assessment.
Interesting. Yeah, the Snap is really the channel I've never actually cracked. So I tried million times with million different games, and it sucked always.
If you're doing, well, you mentioned you're doing a lot of UGC stuff. We've been doing a lot of that as well. And a lot of the same stuff we'll see that works really well on TikTok ports to Snap super well too. So one other category I want to dig into, because just neither of us really mentioned it, is just DSPs in the place that you see them in current landscape.
I do use Moloko from time to time, but when I compare it, Moloko with different DSPs, kind of is the best performance out of all for some reason. But I usually have DSPs on the end of the list, but this is my personal preference, and I guess it's not only me that kind of like pushes the DSPs at the end of the spectrum for some reason. But it can potentially work quite well for different companies. Also, when you have small team and you don't have a lot of resources, so it makes sense to reach out to DSPs like, hey, come on board and help me with some level of scale. Yeah,
it makes sense. I think we've seen similar trends. There's a couple of things, like we've unfortunately seen a bit of a resurgence of fraud in the DSP space. I feel like the narrative, 4 years ago, like every conference, there's like 5 panels on fraud, and then SKAN came out and we just all stopped talking about fraud.
Of course. Yeah.
Like
suddenly, that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, and definitely seen both a reemergence of fraud and a lack of kind of adoption of the MMPs to fight some of the newer formats that we've been seeing, and that more present in DSP in some pools. And I think agreed DSP should be part of a stack, but maybe a little deprioritized. The other thing about DSPs is there's some redundancy, because now seeing more of the inventory from DSPs as a percentage coming from, let's say, Unity and other in-app networks where maybe you're already buying from them. So you're giving an additional margin to the DSP. If they can add value because they have a great algorithm for optimization, maybe it's worth it. Like I said, especially if you're a small team, but that can be another factor.
I'm not saying like, okay, don't spend on DSPs, but it's like always kind of, let's call it tier 2 UA channels or tier 3 UA channel for me, because I can, like if I work with the game, which is not a big one, it's a small game starting to spend. So where would you go? Of course, I start on Facebook, even though I bitch about Facebook all the time. I start there. Then I go to Google slowly, then TikTok, then Unity, then AppLovin, then slowly building the UA mix. But it never starts with DSP.
So I'm curious to talk a little bit about sort of tooling and other tactics, tooling that is effective for a successful UA buyer today. And there's sort of two things I think we want to dig into here. One is, automation has been talked about for time immemorial. Is a UA manager's replacement or best friend or whatever. I mean, we obviously know a lot of the automation is getting pushed onto the algorithms. The networks are doing their own automation. I'm curious if outside of network algorithms, you're using anything as an automation tool or something to extend your tentacles. We can start there.
Yeah, not really. I always use automation when I reach certain level of spend. Obviously, let's let's call it million plus, because until that point I have some like my own workflow that I can manage like multiple campaigns at once, and like don't do that many changes every fucking day because it doesn't make any sense. And even if I run like significant budgets on ad networks, again, I need some level of confidence to be able to, let's say, remove the sub IDs and publishers. And for that, I don't need that automation at all. Of course, million plus 10 channels, that would be just suicide. Of course. Right. In that case, yes, automation can help. Depends on like what kind of automation you have in mind and how do you define automation. Because then automation can be you just upload creatives on every channel that you run. That can be like a part of the automation. That's super helpful. Saves time. Same thing. You have your own dashboards, your own internal tool. If you create a campaign, you can actually deploy the campaigns across all spectrum of your UA channels, of course, with some limitations, but you can do it in one dashboard. If that's automation, of course, that's super helpful and saves time, so much time.
One other thing that I'm curious about, it had its sort of, as SKAN was rolling out last year, it had its moment in the sun. There's a few folks still talking about it quite a bit. And I'm curious, we don't use it a ton. We've used it with a few clients. And the big reveal is I'm talking about mixed media modeling. Is it mixed media modeling anything that you're seriously looking at and talking to your clients about when you're
not really
developing UA strategy? No? Okay,
not really. It's the hype always. Oh, media mix modeling. We need to use it to properly evaluate the iOS. Yes and no. If you have small company, there's no chance you can actually do media mix modeling.
Right. You need so much spend.
No way.
You need a vendor. You need a lot of spend. Yeah, we've done it with some clients, but I'm sure you have hot takes here.
Well, it's something that is like very cool in theory, but when you're actually in the weeds trying to do like your daily UA optimizations, it's like, what good is this doing me right now? It's, I think, helpful maybe at the C level to understand impact of business and separate that out from the UA weeds. But yeah, it hasn't been very actionable, we found, for the day-to-day of UA work.
It's very sexy to talk about, like, oh, we use media mix modeling. We are so cool company. And then you find like, oh no, you don't do any of it. Right. And then what you call media mix modeling is just you're running incrementality tests. That's like, oh, yeah, okay. That's like this slightly different.
We touched on a few like, hype tech of the past that have not been, effectively used at like really large scale. Let's talk about the now big hype of the present, which is not yet being used at large scale. And we'll see how it dies later. AI. What are we doing about AI?
Matej, did you notice how every company magically had AI over the last couple months? Like,
of course,
that's something.
It's the new crypto. It's a new crypto.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a new wave after Web3, and everybody's kind of doubling down on AI these days. No, I mean, I don't think it's going to replace UA or any other job at least in the near future. But it's really helpful. It's really helpful. At least I use Chat GPT and even Midjourney or any other like solution to either very quickly build static images or icons or whatever, because of course let's face it, I'm one man army on the UA front. I do have a creative team, but I don't want to talk to them on a daily basis like, hey, so produce this and that for me, which I can actually very quickly create in Midjourney. My static images or thumbnails or anything that I have in my newsletter, easy. But then like on the static images side as well, icons, easy. Chat GPT, I talk to the AI to actually get different ideas for creative briefs, to get player motivations. Okay, so it's all about like what questions you ask, of course, or the prompts you write, then the answer is going to be better or worse. But it's really helpful because then it kind of like, I'm going into the brainstorming session with like lots of different insights that I didn't have before, or I had before, but it was harder to get.
I really like the examples you just gave, because these are things that teams can try for themselves for free, basically, in very practical ways you can use existing AI. I think the thing that I have no tolerance for is every company that is selling the same shit they sold a year ago, but now there's AI in the pitch somehow. Like I had a friend reach out and they're like, oh, have you heard about this company? It's so cool what they're doing with AI right now. And they had literally just pitched me the week before. And it was like, I'm not going to give too many details, but it was a very basic product that had literally no AI at all. So the term is being thrown around extremely loosely in pitches.
There was this pattern a year ago. So there were like hyper casual companies that were not super successful. They pivoted into Web3 for some reason. Maybe they found success. Maybe they didn't.
Money.
And when they didn't find success, then it's like, oh, generative AI, here we come. And it's like, sure. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, there's those companies that are kind of like the bellwethers of like what is the like what are they raising the next round off of right now? Like what buzzword? Yeah, and it was
let's
all
see
Web3.
what we put what we can put into our pitch deck that's gonna work.
Yeah, so I'd like to dig back into that because we've definitely planted a flag in Web3, and we joke about it too. But to be clear, like we're still personally very bullish on like the long-term future of what Web3 can add to gaming.
Of course,
but there was clearly like a huge bubble around it last year, and a lot of cynical actions taken around people trying to cash out from the space. I'm just curious your personal, both like what you're seeing in the landscape, talking with game developers, how they're viewing Web3, and kind of your personal take on the near-term relevance of Web3 technology in gaming.
No, I think I was on the podcast with Nico on the Folk DAO a few weeks ago, and we talked about like how Web3, and I think Web3 is kind of great. I was really interested in when it kind of started to be a little bit hype and bubble, and I'm pretty sure that kind of adds really interesting layer on top of the mobile game or any game that is out there. But there needs to be a game first, not the other way around. So we create concept, we create white paper, and we have token and whatever. No, it should be other way around. So it needs to be this adds like a really nice component into the LTV. And if you can, or if you struggle increasing LTV for some reason with the current game you have, this can help. I mean, again, it's not going to be easy, but it can help to actually increase the LTV, and then your ability to spend can increase as well at the same time. So, a Web3 friendly UA manager. So I always bitch about like the Web3 evangelists that, that talk about like how Web3 is the cure for everything. Of course, it's not, but it's a good new technology, and I'm pretty sure that we are going to see the tech used more often. I'm really curious to see like what kind of new games are going to be launched this year with Web3 in mind and how that's going to look like. But in terms of the UA, it was really funny when UA on Web3 was all about like community building. Of course, again, it's a part of the UA mix, but you can't just scale the community to millions in few weeks or months. Right. You need to have different pillars of the UA. So community is one, you have partnerships, you have DAOs, you have all the like guilds and everything, but also you have the UA component in there. You can't scale the game without it. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, there's at best in current climate, there's maybe tens of thousands of active, if you throw out like Axie and a couple of positive outliers that have kind of their own distinct ecosystems. But yeah, I mean, we always think of that Web3 audience and building the community as kind of an additional earlier stage of soft launch. So you're building a game. Yeah. Cool. The game doesn't even exist yet. Cool. Let's grow your core community through Web3, the early adopters that are interested in being part of this even before the game launches. Now the game launches. Okay, cool. We need tens of thousands of regular players to execute a soft launch. We're not going to find them here. We now use more a traditional growth marketing and UA playbook. And then from there on out, you kind of just for addressable audience, you have to have products and a strategy that can address mass market gamers. It's just mass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like based on, if you make any decision based on the community, it's like very core audience, of course, but that's not going to help you find broad audience afterwards. So you need to have that type of data as well. You can't just rely only on the community. That would be just very, very, very tough.
It's just seed. It's a seed a game, right? Not to be the end all be all.
And I think the good news is we've seen the more mature teams figure that out on their own of like, oh, okay, we're going to have to pivot our product to be a real game for just regular gamers with using Web3 as like a technological layer to make the game design more interesting, to make the economy more interesting. But it's not the focus. It's not like buy this NFT and now you're allowed to play the game. Everyone had it backwards early on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But like that was the hype all about like, we'll mint the NFTs. We'll earn a lot of money on that mint, and then we'll see what happens. Yeah,
it's a fundraising strategy and it worked.
True.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, one of the other
wasn't players. Yeah, it was investors. Sorry.
One of the other things that I think is pretty interesting, and I'm not sure if you have any hot takes here, Matej, but it really seems like regulators, at least American regulators, who've been asleep at the wheel for call it a decade, are kind of waking up for the first time and actually doing something. I mean, one of the obvious things is Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft is now being contested in court. Also, Google is being sued by the DOJ for being anti-competitive. It seems likely that there'll be an Apple and Google lawsuit about the App Store specifically. Obviously, this is projection and wild speculation, but I'm curious if you have any takes on what is going to be the impact of regulation on gaming and UA in the next,
Honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea. But it's interesting.
It's going to make it interesting.
Yeah, but why now? Why is it happening now? Like what's changed? Do you tell me?
I have a theory. I mean, I think it has to do with the administration of the government, right? So under Trump, it was free reign. There was no one there was very anti-corporate governance. And now you have Lena Khan, who was put in. She's been there for 2 years. She's getting her feet under her, and she's been building these cases and putting people in place for 2 years. And now you're finally seeing the impact of that regime. That's my theory.
No, I mean, look. So how would the potentially the cancellation of the acquisition of Activision impact the UA on, let's say, on mobile? Not sure but if yes, it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen. But
yeah, I don't think that one specifically going to have a huge impact on UA. I think the other ones have a huge potential to have an impact on UA. If the government steps in and tells Apple and Google that they're a monopoly in the App Store and they need to change some of their policies, I mean, that could potentially be open season for UA. If it's as simple as hey, reduce your cut by 10%. All of a sudden, all these businesses that didn't exist now are viable businesses, and it'll be a bloodbath. Everyone's trying to rush back in. A lot of people will go out of business again, and then there'll be a few more consolidated, more powerful winners.
But is that actually achievable, or is it just maybe potentially in 10 years it's going to happen?
I think that timeline's probably right. Maybe 5.
Yeah, and I don't want to get Xander started on TikTok and regulation, but I think that's the other big looming question. If US will take any action banning TikTok, because that would have a huge impact to the UA landscape.
That's
so obviously for TikTok, but for the other channels, because the money will then move, as we all said, TikTok's such a huge channel, it's got to move to the next best option.
Exactly. And honestly, if the percentage on the cut on the stores decreases at some point, that would be just not only UA managers wet dream, but also small developers really wet dream, so many options now. Yeah, that's great.
It really would change.
But again, when that's happening, it's just I don't see it's going to happen.
I think they'll bring suits soon, within the next few years, and then, but that doesn't mean they're going to win, right? And so it's really a big unknown.
Yeah, this can't be a never-ending story after all. It's gonna drag for 3 years. But if that starts, that's already a good sign.
Yeah, I think a theme of a lot of what we're talking about today is it's not very beneficial to kind of scream at the clouds of this situation sucks or I don't have the tools I need. These are the rules of engagement. We're all on the battlefield doing growth marketing, and this is the state of the battlefield today. So you just have to operate within that state. Don't wait for it to change, because these things might never change, or they might change to make things harder for us. But everyone else has got the same rules. So the same way that iOS is a pain in the ass for your team, it's a pain in the ass for everyone else. So if you put in that work, you can have the edge. I think that's the theme I'm hearing in a lot of what we're discussing today.
No, of course, because still you need to adapt to what kind of happened. And if you don't, well, you can wait forever. It's not, and like I said, if it's going to change, who says it's going to change for the better, or if it's going to revert back? Let's just focus on what's happening now. Don't complain. It's never going to help if you complain. Just try to learn what's happening, how to overcome these challenges, because everybody has the same challenges, as you said. That's how it is. We have the same conditions now. The more skillful UA managers kind of win at some point.
I appreciate that point, Matej. I think it's really interesting talking to you. You take a lot of the same perspectives our team does. I think you're able to really see the same thing that we do, which is that for those who are willing to do the work, there's a huge amount of opportunity, and you can really effectively scale games. And it's not easy, it's hard, but that's what makes it good for people like you and I and Warren, whose job it is. And so I guess the drum here to beat is there's still a chance here. You just got to continue to put in the work. So I appreciate you coming on to have that discussion with us.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. And also, of course, it's again, it's not going to get any easier. It's hard, but that's the part of the job. Get used to it.
Yeah, I think that's good, wise words. I mean, maybe that's a good parting thought right there, Matej. But any last thoughts you have for the audience today, or anything that you want to hype up that you're particularly passionate about or working on right now?
Well, only thing that don't be scared to actually spend against iOS. Try different things if you can, and your cash flow allows you to, and just speak to your fellow developers and share as much as you can, because that's how we can all win afterwards.
And obviously subscribe to the Brutally Honest newsletter. Check out the 2.5 Gamers podcast. Matej, other than that, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, ping me on LinkedIn. It's always the best one. I do have a website, but I'm all always on LinkedIn. You open up LinkedIn and then I am like multiple times
Perfect.
on your newsfeed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Matej. Warren, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, thank you so much, Matej. As always, the podcast was brought to you by us here at Upptic. So here at Upptic, we do all things to help games grow, both providing the team to do traditional user acquisition, Web3 marketing, creative development, as well as the tool set for cool things like predictive analytics on iOS, measuring everything, creative workflows, ASO tools, kind of the whole suite. We describe ourselves as a bolt-on growth marketing org. So if you need help growing your game, I mean, first, reach out to Matej, but you can also reach out to Upptic. You can reach us on our website, which is upptic.com. That's upptic.com.
Awesome. Talk soon.
Thank you.